Welcome, welcome. We're back. Actually, episode 17. Wow, been on for a while. The usual host and my compatriot, Rochelle Cameron, is actually off tonight, so I'm taking over. You'll have to put up with me and my crazy ways. I do not claim to be as good a host as she could be, but here we are. I'm what's happening tonight. Episode 17, we've covered a lot of ground. And again, tonight is rebuilding, reinforcing, and re-empowering SMEs. We're going to talk to three different people about a new training program that has just started in terms of getting SMEs from around the country back in gear, up to speed, and strengthened again. If you have not received our memo, remember every week we send a memo with before the show. Please email us at sme@psoj.org, sme@psoj.org, because the memo contains the learning information that you would have had on the show. What we have found is that many different SMEs learn in different ways. Some like to read, some like to look at the graphics, some like to actually hear and see the visual. So we give all kinds of options to make sure that you actually get to retain much of the information that we're trying to teach. Because again, at the end of this, at a minimum, we want to make sure that you're a better business person than before COVID. And now is the time to sort of access training and using it as actively as possible in your business. So again, episode 17, rebuilding, reinforcing, and re-empowering SMEs. Tonight, we're going to start with Sheryl Chong. Sheryl Chong is actually the CEO of Honeybun Limited. Those are the sweets that many children, sweetbreads and stuff, many children like, many adults like, that have been around for a while. And she's the founder of the Honeybun Foundation. And it's in that context in which we're going to talk to her tonight. She's a past president of Jamaican Exporters Association, which is now merged with Jamaican Manufacturers Association. And it was during her tenure that her passion to support SMEs actually flourished. Sheryl believes in the creative industry and in the potential it has for brand Jamaica. Welcome, Sheryl. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Nevada, and thank you so much for inviting us here.
Excellent.
We're really pleased. And I want to start off by thanking the PSOJ for the work they're doing. It is phenomenal. When this is over and done, the PSOJ will be greatly remembered for their contribution to rebuilding. So thank you, PSOJ.
Okay, very good. We're going to try and back up our SMEs for sure. Yes. Sheryl, let's talk a little bit about the Honeybun Foundation specific and what you're trying to do. Tell us about this training program. What is it? How did you come about it and everything? Yes.
Okay. So the Honeybun Foundation was founded based on the fact that while I was the president at the JEA, I had a couple of programs that desperately needed execution to support SMEs. And I had the programs documented and they needed to happen. So I decided after the merger that I wanted to do it as a foundation because I wanted it not to have any distraction. It would be solely focused on these programs. So I'll just let you know the four programs very quickly. The first one is training for SMEs. So we have a training platform on our website, thehoneybunfoundation.com. And it is the collaboration of a lot of associations that already did training. So we just brought them together in one place where when you're looking for training, you can look for them in a 12-month calendar. The second one, which I'm very pleased we're so advanced with, I never knew it would happen so quickly after the launch in November, in spite of COVID, is a diagnostic app that we're developing so that businesses can go on the app on their phone, answer 15 questions and get feedback immediately on where the gaps are in their business, and it will point them to where to go to close those gaps. So that one is going to be launched in September, October, but we're very excited about that happening so fast. In fact, the writer of the program, Niritech, was so excited about it, they are co-sponsoring it. The third one will be advisory boards for SMEs, and the fourth one will be back office for SMEs. So we're happy about all of the programs that we're planning. So
Excellent. So
what?
let me repeat again, Michelle. So there's a training and the training calendar for SMEs, which is one. There's a diagnostic tool, a diagnostic app, which will launch in September, you said? Yes?
Yeah.
There is advisory board on how to have an advisory board, how to access an advisory board. And then there is back office, managing a back office, what? Inexpensively, efficiently, that sort of thing.
Yes, but it will be for those companies who cannot master the skills. So they're
Yes.
going to somewhat outsource it. We haven't developed that model as yet. And
Okay.
the foundation mission statement is about creating powerful business models for SMEs in the creative sector to empower them to become transformational industries for Jamaica. So we're not doing anything in the foundation. We're finding people who do it, and we're building the models so
Excellent.
that it can
Excellent.
be across
And
Jamaica.
linking both.
Yes,
Excellent.
linking all the players, particularly private sector. This is going to be our focus. We're not going to harp on government. We will get
Yes.
there one day probably, but it's going to have to be happen through private sector. So this curriculum program that we launched today, we had
No,
our
this is all
first
about creating a strategic roadmap. This is this
creating,
program.
yes, creating a strategic roadmap. Because what I saw was that there were a lot of fantastic webinars going on, a lot. And people were watching them and they were engaged, but there was no call to action after you watched them. So we decided that when we did the training platform for the Honeybun Foundation, we already determined that we would develop curriculum models. Some of the programs were being offered face to face, and COVID caused most of them now on the platform
Online.
to be digital.
Right.
So that just brought that process forward. And then now the three curriculum, well, that we had two curriculum that we wanted to do on the platform. One is about access to finance. And the other one was going to be about if you wanted to export, these are the programs that we recommend you do if you want to export.
Excellent. Yes.
So having had much discussion with Exim Bank, Lisa Bell, we agreed that if SMEs were to do some of these training, it would help them to qualify more easily
Absolutely.
to
Yes.
access. So what we've done with this particular curriculum, it is now our first curriculum program that we're offering, and it's valued at over 250,000, being offered to SMEs at 50,000. Of course, our applicants have already been selected, but
Yes.
you know, if they come in and beg Shawn, our general manager, enough, she's a very kind-hearted person. We've only had one gone so far. She may slip them through. We don't like to say no too easily.
Yes.
But
But
nonetheless,
also, it's not only one time you're going to run it, right? I assume that at some other point in the year, you may run
yeah.
it again.
So this is what will happen. After
Yes.
we run this program for 10 weeks with
Yes.
12 critical business courses, then
Okay.
what will happen is that the curriculum program will become a part of the Honeybun Foundation training platform. It will be there and you can do the 12 programs, probably not at this cost again,
Right.
but they will be run again. And we achieved what we wanted to, which was to begin to engage private sector. So Wisinco is our main sponsor, and we also have sponsorship from Exim Bank, which is really the government contribution to the program. And I know
Yes.
Metcalf has always supported us at the foundation. We have Sagicor, we have NCB, and we have Fleetwood Jamaica. So we're happy to have private sector begin to understand the vision, to
Yes.
participate and partner with us. We're not competing with any organization. We're collaborating with them,
Yes.
and we are promoting the things they're doing.
So, Michelle, give me sort of the high points. What are the main courses that you do in the overall course? What are the main
Okay.
courses that you do?
So we start off with two marketing programs. The one we had today was done by Daniel Terrelong, the fundamentals of marketing, and it was 3 hours, and all the trainees were excited about it. We have had positive feedback. Next week we're doing research, marketing research, because you can't build a business plan if you don't have some data. We have, and I'm going through quickly, the governance one, which is building the foundation, Julie Thompson from Cube. Then there's a Mystique of Leadership with this Alex Ihama from the School of Greatness in Canada. We have the HR strategy, which is one that we're promoting in this program, because we believe that after COVID, one of the new skills people are going to learn. Nashona, can you bring this down for me? One of the new skills that people are going to have to learn. I don't know what
Yes.
happened. Is about how to create a culture that is
Yes.
going to make you successful if this ever happens again. So the days
Understood.
of boss and worker, the culture is going to be critical. Then we
Okay.
have that's Tashana Briscoe, and we have em- employment, risk, litigation, and termination, and that's
Yes,
Dylan.
that's critical, of
That's
course.
very critical for
Yes.
business, right? And
Yes.
we're going to go into cost of quality. We're going to go into the cost of quality. That's Sheryl who will be speaking tonight. Managing productivity and knowing your numbers, which is going to be Lance
Yes.
Thomas from Capacity Concept. Attracting and raising capital. Dimitri is here with us tonight.
Excellent.
And
Yeah.
e-commerce, which of course is important for businesses at this time. And finally, tapping into global markets. So,
Yes, of course. No,
yeah,
this seems like a good core base, Michelle, and says, and you said
yes.
from the beginning to end, it's going to take the person 10 weeks to do it. Is there a certification afterwards, or just basic the learning, run with it? Or do you give a
Yes,
certification?
I'll tell you the two. What will happen? There's three things. One is that there will be a certificate at the end of it. And what
Okay.
we've actually done is we had a curriculum consultant put the programs together as a formal curriculum so that the
Excellent.
certificate will have a lot more credit to
Yes.
its paper, so to speak. The second thing, and this is very critical, Nevada, is that after each module in the training, what will happen is that the trainee will have to update a project plan with the things they're going to have to do as a result of the new training. So at the
Perfect.
end
So
of
it's
the program,
actionable. Actionable.
actionable with timelines
Yes.
and resources. So they are also learning about project management, even though it's not a course.
Right.
So
Right.
that is the high point to it. So because we have that, we're going to start off with the existing business,
Yes.
sales and profits, and we're going to set targets and we're going to monitor
After
them
they've done the course.
after they've done the course and be able to
Excellent.
see the impact. So this,
Fantastic, Michelle. This sounds really, really good. I'm going to
yes,
shift gears for a second to ask you a question about
sure,
Honeybun itself.
yes.
Pre-COVID, during COVID, what you've done. Because again, obviously you're a much bigger business, but many of our SMEs like to learn and understand what might have happened in your business situation and what have you done to survive or thrive or grow. So
Okay.
share us a little bit about your own business story
Okay,
since
so
COVID.
yeah, since COVID, what has happened is we do contract baking for some of the fast food businesses, and
Yes.
that contracted a lot. So of course our sales would have been hit. The
And
other thing,
schools as well,
and
right?
schools was the major one. The fact that
Yes.
schools are out was a huge thing for us because that's a large part of our market. So of
Mhm.
course, with sales reduced, we had to find new ways of selling. So we did a couple of things. We started to deliver, and we also started to send out trucks into areas where there were a lot of people to be able to sell from the trucks. But while we were managing the top line, we were also managing the bottom line. So what is
Yes.
nice about that is we were contracting and becoming more and more efficient in terms of how we do things. Cut cost,
Wow.
reduce percentage cost of sales on various things. And guess what? We've still
Yes.
maintained those systems of improving our efficiencies.
Excellent.
So that has been a plus for us to be able to manage our expenses down.
So when did it occur to you that, you know what, I need to move into a different gear? At what date did you kind of say, okay, versus you were waiting, and then you said, no, let me shift into gear.
No waiting.
No waiting. You moved
No waiting.
immediately.
Move immediately. We have
What were you,
real
you're watching what is happening in the rest of the world? What was it that made you say, boy, this is a serious, let me move? Because some of our SMEs, as you can imagine, I'm sure you've seen this too,
yes,
frozen by just
yes,
what's happening. I'm not
yes.
sure what am I supposed to do, what's happening, etc., etc. So that awareness point is actually very critical.
Well, I think it was very important not to panic. And I
Hmm.
think that we have been going through a lot of training and development over the past couple of years. And so we were building our leadership qualities within the company. And so you didn't have people who, sometimes when you have disasters, people begin to blame, begin to react,
Yeah.
begin to get panicky. We meet weekly, and we have brought our meetings to a level where it is extremely strategic. So we're able to have good conversations. So we weren't doing something new. We were just bringing new content to the meeting and saying, okay, this is happening, team. What are we going to do about this? So I
So the
think because,
system, yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
I would say the governance, just the
Yes.
behavior of the company and the things in place allowed us to have a platform to launch from even in hard times.
So you would already have the systems and processes in place. And therefore, just because there's a crisis, that operating system that you had in place could just move into gear to deal with the crisis. And it had
That's
dealt with the non-crisis
right.
before. Very critical. This whole idea of how do you set up your operation. Michelle, this has been fantastic. We're going to talk to a couple of the trainers who are part of the program, and then bring you back at the end to sort of have a
Okay.
general discussion. But this sounds
Okay.
like an amazing thing. So it's 12 different training programs over 10 weeks. And with making sure accountability is critical, the timeline, as well as recognizing that it's bringing private sector trainers together with private sector businesses and creating the link through the Honeybun Foundation to make sure that the group is ready not only to survive COVID, but be ready once COVID is over to actually spring into action. Michelle,
Yes.
congratulations. Thank you
Thank
very,
you.
very much for this.
Yes, thank you.
Excellent. That was fantastic, and it's a good starting point because now we're going to get into the meat of some of the areas that is covered in the Honeybun Foundation program. Again, for those of you who are just joining us, it's episode 17, rebuilding, reinforcing, and re-empowering SMEs. And we're talking about a particular business program from the Honeybun Foundation that has training, specifically on a training calendar, so you can look 12 months ahead to see what's out there. There's going to be a diagnostic tool to figure out what it is that you need. There is there's getting to an advisory board and back office support. So this sounds like an exciting program for the SMEs going forward. Next up, one of the trainers who are part of the program is Dmitri Dawkins. Dmitri is managing director of Graft Ventures, a venture capital, and a private equity firm providing venture capital financing and business support services to Caribbean-wide SMEs. Now, again, venture capital is when you actually, these are people generally, not all the time, but generally do equity financing. And therefore, this is a new player in the market. So we want to hear some of his ideas about how equity financing can work in a COVID environment. Prior to his experience spans 10 years in enterprise IT, sales, and business development. Prior to Graft Ventures, Dmitri worked with the Branson Center for Entrepreneurship for 3 years. So very welcome to you, Dmitri. Come on board.
Thanks, Nevada.
How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah, we were talking just before the program about what you were seeing in terms of SMEs, some of the difficulties, some of the positives. Give us a brief thing about the landscape before we get into sort of what does the equity play and all of that have to do with all of this. Yes.
All right. So first off, I just want to highlight there's a little bit of a bias of the SMEs I've been seeing, because the SMEs that have been talking to me are coming to me for financing. They've actually had a lot of business growth during the COVID pandemic, and they actually need more financing to grow. So I haven't really had as much feedback from SMEs that have been more severely impacted overall. But
yes,
from a positive standpoint, these SMEs I have been speaking with, manufacturing is very strong. They find that their demand not only is sustained, but in some cases increased.
What kind of manufacturing, Dmitri? What kind of manufacturing sort of has seen growth?
This is for like food, basic home items, things that don't stop any at all. You're always going to go to the supermarket and buy them overall. Sort of like what Michelle was saying earlier with her products. They just have found new ways to sell to them. So more
new distribution channels, correct?
E-commerce, etc., to get to their customers using social media, etc. So and then of course working on efficiency, like problems such as how do you keep a full factory floor while maintaining COVID safety protocols.
Yes. Right.
Like things that you didn't quite consider because it's not part of your standard health and safety protocols.
Has that been something that you have helped companies reorganize their factory floors and stuff to get organized?
Not directly. I put them in touch with some of our associates that we have.
Okay.
Directly, I mean, when we don't have the expertise in this, I'd have no problem introducing people to those who can, because the only way we're going to really build and move forward is to collaborate. And collaboration is really what we need in this economy, especially in this pandemic.
Yes, excellent, excellent. All right, we had the conversation about debt or equity and so on, and there's a couple of slides that I think we have for this section. So the first thing, when you going in for trying to pitch for money, I guess you talk about a demonstrable good product or service. What do you mean by that, and how do I demonstrate that I have a good product or service?
Well, the first thing, of course, is demand. Is it that sales have absolutely fallen off? The other thing is, how are you compared to your other competitors? Is it that somebody only buys your product because it's more cost effective, or is it that this really is their favorite first choice at all times? And then, of course, it brings back to like the brand loyalty. All of us know great brands that we even refer to certain things. I mean, Q-Tip is actually our brand name. You think of Scotch Brite or something else like that. Is this top of mind? Is your product top of mind when somebody thinks of that product category?
So just to understand, you prefer a situation where somebody's actually choosing a brand for the brand or for the product, as opposed to just buying it because it's the cheapest, or opposed to just buying it because it happened to be located close to me. Like a bottle of water, I'll take whichever bottle of water is nearby. But you prefer brands in which somebody I'm actually traveling to halfway through Ligani to actually go and buy this particular product.
Yeah, so or on a shelf with 30 other products, they prefer to pick up your brand over those others. Yeah.
Understand. Number two, you had here a case study and success stories. When you're asking somebody for case study and success stories, what are you looking for from them?
I think of like particularly our craft industry. I find that we have great artisans overall that produce great products, but they just don't demonstrate that as much. They can't show that, okay, they have a certain amount of customer satisfaction, or that they have very few returns, or the fact that a customer comes back to them every single year to buy a new product from them. And so you have to demonstrate that it's not just that initial sale, but the fact that you produce a product or a service at a certain point that keeps people coming back. And you can document that and show that to an investor, banker, anybody.
It's a fantastic thing. So if I did a crafting, for example, I gave it as a gift, and that person I gave it as a gift came back and bought something else and I gave it as a gift. Those kinds of success stories you actually want to see, because that show that the product has life cycle, has length, and can go on. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So remember, everybody, it's not just about the product, but the stories that you're collecting around the product, and the story that you're able to tell about repeat buying, ongoing customers, and so on. Next up, what's the next one? Financial strengths and opportunities. All right, you have explained that now. Break it down for us. What are you looking for?
Well, cash is key, and you have to show where this cash came from. I know many business people, they have profitable businesses, and they might have the big car, the house, a fat bank account. Really and truly, unless you can show the traction of how you got there and what is the efficiency in developing this cash on a day-to-day basis. And I really mean cash in a literal sense, because we can get into comprehensive income and a bunch of other terms, but we're just talking about how much do you sell on a daily basis, what are your expenses like, how do you manage this? And that way, as a financier, I can know that, okay, you actually do have a grasp on the management of your finances overall. And it's not just because things are really good right now, or the tourism industry keeps on growing every year, or I don't know, some kids have more disposable income. It's the fact that you are actually actively managing your resources, and you can demonstrate how you managed it.
One of the things I found, and I want to know if you see some of this, sometimes we're seeing situations with SMEs where literally their pricing doesn't even exactly cover their costs. Because they don't have a good understanding of what goes into serving the product. So you'll have somebody with a restaurant, for example, and you say, well, how much does that meal cost you? And they're putting on extra tomato and extra beef and a little extra this and a little sauce, not recognizing that you actually cannot serve the thing that you're serving for $800. You're actually losing money. So having an understanding of your cost structure.
And they see the cash coming in, and they just don't understand why you're at a deficit at the end of the month. And it's because somebody took a little extra soda, or a little extra sauce, or there was a little too much spoilage in the kitchen, or things like that absolutely erode your margins.
So understanding your financial structure. Then the next one I think you have is number 4 is the leadership team. Talk to us about what you look for when you look for a leadership team that you want to invest in.
Right. Well, I mean, every company is just really a representative of the team behind it, right? What I want to see is that the team has the experience, particularly that they have the vision going forward as far as how to scale and grow this company. If it is that you don't feel like you have that experience, I want to see that foresight that I need to hire certain roles to ensure that we can continue growing. Because it's impossible for any founder to lead their company throughout an entire lifetime. Really and truly. You're going to have different times where you need support and different team members, etc. And it should be very dynamic. So
yes.
Just even if everything is not in place right now, the mere fact that you know that, okay, I do need a finance manager in the future, or I do need an operations supervisor, or just some as simple as an accountant or an additional customer service rep. But showing that leadership and forethought really lets me know that, okay, you have a bigger vision, a bigger idea, and you have an idea of how to get there, and increases the trust level in me as a financier or anybody else that you can actually manage this going forward.
Okay, which leads to another thing, which is the next one I think is about good. Number 5 is good corporate governance. What does that mean? And many SMEs don't have that. Governance, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, well, Michelle had mentioned it a while ago with having all of our plans in place because of our governance structure. But on just an even smaller level, the fact is, as a founder, as a CEO, as whatever your role is in a company, it's heavy is the head that wears the crown, and you have all of these dynamics working with. But really and truly, if you are just the only person reviewing these things, you can often miss out or not see the bigger picture. By working with advisors, directors, preferably a board of directors, then you can have someone else look over your shoulder, look at the KPIs, look at the progress that you're making, and provide key advice in specific verticals, let's say legal, let's say finance, let's say business development, etc., to help push you forward. Everybody, I mean, whether you are a CEO or you're just a customer service rep, everybody in the organization, I think, should have some amount of coaching. And so in the case of a CEO or a management team, you should have governance in place to help guide you and improve you over the years.
Dmitri, let me ask you a question though. But would you do it for what is the minimum size company would you need? You'd say we need this, or you would start it. So it's supposed to be a four people started a company. Do we need governance?
Yes, I think you do. I mean, immediately. Even if all 4 people are directors, try add 1 or 2 independent directors as well. Because you just need that external thought, and you need someone else to help you keep on point. When somebody, that every single quarter you're going to have a board meeting and share your numbers, that somebody else is looking over and saying, hey, you told us you're going to hit this sales target, we didn't. What happened? And force that conversation. Oftentimes, if you're really good as a team internally, you can have that conversation as well. But having the governance in place actually forces you to just, yes, we're going to talk about this on a quarterly basis and keep on track.
Understood. Number 7 is financing options. How does one think about debt versus equity, and then the various types of equity options that there are?
Right. So oftentimes, all right, when somebody's thinking, I need to get investment, but what type of investment? If it is that you're purchasing a new office building, that doesn't necessarily mean that you need an equity investment, because equity is actually one of the most expensive forms of investment overall. That's because you give up a portion of your company, some shares in your company, for most times perpetuity, long term, right? Whereas if it is that you're purchasing a building, you get a 25-year, 15-year mortgage on that building, where that at the end of the day, you own that asset outright and the payments would have stopped. So when you're thinking of, okay, I need investment, do I need investment for assets that are going to be more productive, or do I need it just for cash flow? Maybe you might just need, for cash flow, you might need a short-term microfinance investment, or maybe you need a longer-term security from a bank. Or say an asset, you need a new equipment, well, then you can go to a bank for that. You don't give up a part of your company for something that's only going to help you in the very short term.
But Dmitri, let me ask you a question now. In particular, this COVID time, And again, obviously, it's different situations. But isn't in this time you would say that equity is a better bet than debt, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily.
Because of the uncertainty is what I mean. I start a business, it could be stop-start, virus growing, therefore I'm not going to have money to pay back the debt. I don't know. Do you think about equity and debt differently than you would have, say, in January, December?
Yeah, I think it's definitely different now. I don't know if it's a better option now. It entirely depends on your cash flow and your overall goals, etc. But there are investors who are willing to invest equity right now, even during COVID, because there's so many new opportunities that have come up. I remember that, in the last major recession, 2008, 2009, that's where we got Airbnb and a bunch of other new companies.
Absolutely.
And I don't want to harp on like the unicorn effect. There's an industry term called camels now, where you can create resilient companies that are, go at a steady pace, grow at a certain rate. In times of droughts, you have enough cash flow to survive overall. And I think that's what we should be forming. And there are investors that are looking to fund companies like this. I know that First Angels Jamaica is now, they just opened up their applications again, and they have a course that you have to complete starting next week to be able to pitch to them in October. So, if you're just starting a business and need that to make the cash, then I talk to First Angels. If you're at the growth stage where you're already generating revenue, you have 50 million Jamaican or more per year in revenue, and you need that additional cash now, then you can come to us at Graft Ventures, and there are a couple other players in the ecosystem as well.
What about the business that was doing well before COVID, will do well after COVID, but can't survive the 2-year thing? Where would they go? What's the best bet for somebody like that?
It depends overall. If it is that they had a very strong cash flow before and should return to a strong cash flow, I think that they could look at instruments like a bond.
Okay.
So a bond, you'd pay an annual coupon or an interest rate per year without necessarily having to pay back some of the principal aspects of that bond. So in other words, when you take a bond, you would say have a 5-year term. Every year for those 5 years, you pay the interest amount, but then at the end of the 5 years, then you pay the full value of the bond.
So something that stretches out the payment, that you borrow the money and then you immediately have to pay it like you done a regular loan, but something that stretches out the payment. So I go back to the chart again. Number 8, we have calculate the risk, finding the right partner, and the meeting. We're just going to do kind of the 3 of them together. Calculate the risk. Tell us about that.
I mean, with all forms of financing, there is risk overall. Can you meet these obligations, whether it's an equity, whether it's debt, etc.? For debt, you have to have these cash flow obligations, whether monthly, annually, etc., that you have to meet. For equity, you might have other targets such as sales targets or certain financial ratios that you have to meet. What is the risk of you're not meeting them, and what is the impact of you're not meeting them overall, right?
Okay.
Then that leads directly into the partner. Is this partner just saying, hey, I don't care, give me my money every single month? Or is this partner flexible and saying, okay, we are more of a flexible financier. We're willing to work with you if things go wrong because we know that stuff happens. Maybe we might change you to another instrument or provide, some interim financing or just change the term.
Flexibility, work with you. Look at the actual situation that you're in and maybe rethink the financing structure that we have given you in order to make sure you have the room to grow.
Exactly. And oftentimes, even if they can't offer it, they might, they should be able to refer you to other industry players who can help. So like you have a Cygnus that does mezzanine financing now, which is a fancy word for just really flexible financing depending on your needs overall, whether short-term or long-term, right?
Okay. And then you talk about the meeting. What is about the meeting? The actual meeting.
The actual meeting, you just have to be upfront. I find that oftentimes we're too afraid to just talk brass tacks, right? What are the needs? What are the terms? What are my fears? What am I worried about not meeting in certain cases? And just making sure that the other party understands and understanding if they can meet those terms as well.
Dmitri, let me ask you a question. How many pages should the meeting presentation be? Because some places are 100 page deck, and other people come with the 5. What? And again, it's not so much the paper, but we just get a sense for people just to understand. I'm pitching my business to Graft Ventures. How long is that? How long is the meeting? How long is the deck that I'm bringing to you?
Initial conversation, I think maybe 15, 20 minutes max at about 12 slides. And then you can break down into further details. always have further details to discuss. Like, don't go into a meeting with a bag of fluff, and then when people ask questions, then it's I don't know, I'm not sure. You must have the information to back it up, but it should be concise and clear and not so complicated.
Okay, so that's it. I must know the 100-page deck, but I'm only bringing 12, so that if one of the things get moved into one area, I can talk with the detail very easily. Excellent. I'm going to put a challenge, about a particular problem, a real problem that's facing some of our businesses, and it's a hotel business, a boutique hotel. Just put up the chart for us to see. Okay. So there's a boutique hotel typically has strong revenues pre-COVID, high margins, and repeat guests. Based in rural Jamaica, guests love the natural beauty of the property and its surroundings. The hotel promotes community tourism, keeping their overheads low. Unfortunately, they have a maximum of 1 year cash, even if they close the property, but just to do the maintenance, security, to look at painting, and just that, and then they're out of business. So if COVID lasts 2 to 3 years before we have a vaccine, this business that was a very good business before suddenly gets into trouble before we are back in the thing. I'd sent this to you before to give it some thought, and you had given us some examples. I just want to if you could share the page, and then we'll just talk us through what you think this the options for this hotel are.
Right. So the first thing, the fact that a hotel, you have recurring income, usually from US dollars as well, and it being a hotel, it has some form of assets, whether the property itself and then the furniture, equipment, etc. So, you can look at flexible financing in different ways, whether it is that you're going to look at maybe a convertible note, which will give you initial debt that converts to equity based on specific terms. Meaning that if I need $100,000 to last for the next year, well, we will lend you the money at a certain coupon rate, at 10% per year. But if things don't go as well, or things go very well, that can convert to equity to give the investor additional upside, right? You can also look at things like a shared earnings agreement.
So, so you said if it don't go well or go well, it can be either. It can be converted. So if it's not going well, I convert it to equity and wait to get my money back as a venture investor. If things go very well, and then I can put an option to convert it to equity to get some of that upside.
To get some of that upside in future, right?
That's excellent and very clear. Next.
There's a brand new instrument called a shared earnings agreement, and this is very popular with bootstrapped, meaning companies that haven't taken on investment before, they've paid for everything out of pocket and now need some investment going forward. So what this says is that, okay, you plan to make X amount of money per year. We're not going to take equity in your company, but instead you're going to pay us 20% of your profit each year until you pay back this full amount over the next 4 or 5 years, whatever the terms are. And so therefore it's somewhat, it's not quite debt, it's not quite equity, but you have an investor with skin in the game with you. They understand that every single month you might not generate this cash, but when you do have it, pay us. When you don't, then it's okay.
But what I like about that instrument, especially in the COVID time and the lending and in uncertainty, that seems to match the cash flow. And therefore, when if you end up having a good month, a good thing, pay us back a little more. If you have a bad month, you don't have to pay, and we just track over time and make sure. That sounds like it's almost like a mirroring of what's happening in the business.
Exactly.
Okay, excellent. And the third one is
preference shares. So people, I mean, this is a very common thing locally now, whether from a private or a public standpoint. You can see, I mean, JPS has preference shares listed on the stock exchange.
What does preference shares mean? What does that mean?
So it's not quite common equity where everybody has heard this IPO buzz where you buy and you're a part of the company now. What happens that it typically pays a fixed dividend per year.
Okay.
So you get say 8% on the value of these shares every single year,
which is usually higher than the common shares. The dividend would be higher than the common shares, or not necessarily?
Not necessarily higher, but usually fixed.
So that's what makes it preference,
right? Okay. And part of the preference is also in the case of something going wrong, you are actually higher as an asset class. So when they're liquidating all the assets, etc., you should be paid out before common equity holders. So you're just below the banks, but higher than the founders and other shareholders overall.
Okay. That's fantastic. Yeah, sorry.
And then like the case I had mentioned before with the bonds, so that the hotel can now know that, okay, we got a year worth of cash. We have, say, 3 years or 5 years because it's a redeemable preference share.
Yes.
And so we can just pay some interest on this, make sure we have cash flow for buffer just in case, and just, you know, at the end of the 5 years, we can redeem the shares, pay out the cash, and everybody's happy. But you don't necessarily have these investors on as part of your cap table for perpetuity. Yeah.
Understood. Dmitri, thank you. This is very, very helpful and very insightful. We've been looking and asking around for solutions for businesses and what kind of structured financing options are available if you have a situation when you're a strong business before COVID, likely to be a strong business after COVID, but you simply cannot manage in the 2-year period before we have a vaccine.
And it sounds like
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so a lot of our existing brokerage houses and investment banks are offering this right now. I mean, these are terms they're used to. I mean, maybe not the shared earnings agreement because that's pretty new, but preference shares is an easy setup for most of them to go ahead with.
No, so there should be a lot of equity opportunities in this market over the next year and a half. Thanks a lot, Dmitri. We'll have you back sort of at the end as well. Very good. Next up, we're going to have Sheryl Anderson. Sheryl is the Managing Director for Quality System Solutions and Initiatives, QSSI. It's a consultant organization that offers training, implementation support, and audit services in international quality and food safety standards. She is an ISO 9001 lead auditor, a certified trainer, and a lead instructor for the Food Safety Preventative Control Alliance, and a ProNet trainer for the Caribbean Export Development Agency. She has worked with several organizations, including Bureau of Standards, for over 8 years in several capacities. And she's also head of the national certification body, NCBJ, which is the first certification body in the Caribbean region that has attained international accreditation. Welcome, Sheryl. Good to see you.
Hello, how are you, Nevada? Nice to be here.
Excellent. I'm glad. So I hope you listened to, we got some of the finance training, which was amazing. So clearly, even that alone as part of this overall program is fantastic. I can feel the SMEs getting stronger with that kind of support. So we're all going to hear from you. Your training is around productivity and quality, is my understanding, right?
Yes.
All right, break it down for us now. When you say productivity, what does that mean?
Well, productivity is the ratio of input to output. That is simply the simple definition. Yes. For instance, you want to make sure that you are productive as an SME. So, for instance, let me explain what it is now. So if you're going to be producing, say, 10 cases of orange juices, for instance, I would like to know that the value of my orange juices or my cases of orange juice is much more than the cost or more than the resources that I put into it. So it's a quantitative measure, basically, of how efficient you're operating. So say, for instance, the value of my cases of orange juice is $1.5 million. I would want to expect that cost is much less than the $1.5 million.
So you will go in now, your company will go in, and suppose I see a situation where my cost going is 1.2 and my output is 1.1. You help me identify, you got a problem. And then what do you do? Disaggregate my cost structure and stuff and tell me, you have theft, you have this, you have that. How do you find where I have the problem?
I look at the system as a whole, right? Because every organization, and we encourage our SMEs to systemize, make sure that you have your procedures, all your processes in place and so forth. But remember, when you speak about productivity or quality, it is based on what you see on the profit and loss statement. So your profit and loss statement is really a culmination of all of your operations. So when you look at that financials, you will see that there's something that is going wrong. So you now need to go back to your processes, conduct a study, for instance, and you have to make sure that you identify what the root causes are to the problem. And sometimes what we do as SMEs, we only look at the symptoms. You know, sometimes when you get a cold, you just take some decongestion, and then you take sleep, and the symptoms are runny nose and so forth. So we take the medicine only for the symptoms without looking at the root cause. So what we tend to do is look down further and more vertically at the system to see what is causing the issue. And then once we have identified the issue, we make some recommendations as to how we can improve. Right.
Give me an example of a situation where you went into an SME and they thought the problem was this, and then when you look deeper, it was much more something else. Symptom versus.
Nevada, you're making me crazy. All of this is just coming out. The passion is coming out in because I've gone to so many companies, and because I came in as an objective, I know some things are clear to me, but you don't see them because you are in the operation, so you don't necessarily see what is going on.
Because I'm here every day, I see everything, so I don't really notice anything strange. Yes.
Exactly. I can give you one instance where we went to a manufacturer, and one of their targets, their strategic objective was to increase their fill rate. Their fill rate was supposed to be about 85%. That was their target. But what the CEO was noticing that they were way below their fill rate, and they were measuring at about 65%. And when we talk about fill rate, in other words, you're meeting your customer demand. So what we noticed, there was a very bright young maintenance supervisor who came in, and he did some research and he presented the data. The CEO thought at the time that the reason why they weren't meeting the fill rate was because of downtime of their equipment. But he was able to show the data to demonstrate that he had a lot of idle time.
Okay.
Or he had a lot of, the changeover time was so long. So what he did, when we went in and we did the root cause, what was causing the idle time was poor production planning. In other words, what was happening, people were coming to work. Remember, you still have to pay their salaries,
Irrespective, correct.
And not just that, pay overtime if you don't meet the production demand. So what was happening, the materials, the raw materials and the ingredients were not on the production floor at the start of the production time, the production day. While people were there, they come to work at 7 o'clock, they start production at 12. That is crazy. So you have to now look at all of these issues, because what happens, people just get complacent. With what is going on, and not knowing that all of that money is going down
the drain.
Exactly. And what is happening, just to interject though, COVID time has actually taught us, or actually shown us some of these wastes, because we started paying attention, because the revenue was so low had declined. We now had to look at the cost side. So some of these cost issues now were were more brought to the fore just because of this pandemic. So I just want our SMEs to remain in pandemic stage even after COVID.
After the pandemic. But the whole idea, right, as you said, because the revenue went down, and then you started to look more closely at the cost structure, and you saw where a lot of this waste was.
Absolutely.
Let's shift gears for a second and talk to you about quality.
Yes.
What drives quality in an organization? How do I make sure I'm delivering a quality product or service? Because that is something that we often struggle with, right? And so what are some of the indicators of quality? How do I measure it? How do I make sure I can deliver it?
All right, I'm going to be a scientist for the first part of this definition and tell you that quality is conformance to specifications. Okay, so that is the basic definition. However, you cannot meet quality if you have not met your customer expectations. So we can be efficient at making a bad product. Okay, or we can be efficient at
again. You can be efficient at making a bad product. No, you have to hear that. Yes. It's not only about efficiency. Yes.
Exactly. And the thing is, you can be making a product that nobody wants either. Yeah. Why? Because you did not, in the initial part of the business, seek to find out what the customer wants. So therefore, once there is quality, you have to define quality through the customer's eyes. You have to find out what they think quality is. Let me give you an example. I'm going to use fast food that everybody knows. So say, for instance, I call a pizza house and say, okay, I want a pizza with pineapples, pepperoni, sweet peppers, and so forth, thin crust. So I have now stated what I want from this Pizza Hut house, right? Now, when the person calls, when the customer service rep answers, they will say, okay, they have now taken down the order, they have recorded and said, okay, I'm going to deliver your pizza in 35 minutes, for instance. And you have now agreed on what the cost is. So here where quality can be perceived as bad. Now I can send you your pizza. I've met all the specifications as described. However, I've gotten my pizza 1.5 hours later. So therefore, the perception of quality has now changed, and because of that, I have not met the customer's overall expectations, and therefore, that is when customers defect. Because guess what? Customers are loyal to quality; they are not loyal to company anymore.
Okay.
So we have to make sure that we bear that in mind. So we have to. So quality can be defined based on the quality, the specifications of the product itself, and also based on other customer expectations. So the aesthetics can be one, the conformance, the reliability. All of those dimensions has to be considered when we're trying to define what the quality of a product or a service should be.
Understood. So now let me ask the same question I asked you about productivity. If I recognize that I have a quality problem and my product is not coming out in time or not coming out with the quality as defined by the customer, how do I identify where that quality problem is arising?
You can look at it from the customer perspective and also look at this from the system's perspective. You have to look at it from both of them. So you can find out what the customers are saying about the product, and then now you can now look within the process itself to determine where those issues are, where those bottlenecks are, where am I suffering the specifications aspect. Is it because, say for instance, the product itself is not meeting specification? Could it be at the inspection point? Could it be at the raw material point? So along the system points now at the different processes, that is where I'm going to do the examination. But I must always consider it from the customer point of view as well as my own internal processes. And not just that, and even by extension too, sometimes I may have to do a study from the supplier end. Because if I'm making orange juices, I cannot inspect quality in a product if the raw material that I'm getting from my suppliers is spoiled or is not meeting the specifications. So I also have to engage my suppliers just to make sure that the raw materials, every part of the chain, has met all the requisite specifications.
Sheryl, you remember a few years ago when we did have bad gas in the system?
Oh Lord!
You remember when we had the thing, right? So how do we think that a problem like that? Because clearly, at the end of the day, there were people buying gas that wasn't working. But while this entire chain that got back out to, as you said, supplier on supplier on supplier, how would you, if you were hired to help resolve that problem, how would you go about it?
It is just as how I explained. I'm still going to look at it from the customer end. I'm going to do the requisite testing, obviously, of the product itself. And I'm going to look where along the line it actually failed. Whether within my process or whether from the supplier point of view. And then, because the thing is, whenever you have the customer actually receiving bad quality, is the most expensive part of your operations. Because
the whole thing.
Exactly. So now that I've gotten bad gas, guess what happened? What is the cost of the loss of a life? What is the value of a lifetime? What is the lifetime value, of a customer? And I've now lost that customer. So it's more expensive when the customer is on the receiving side. So I'm going to make sure that if there are any problems that exist within my organization, I'm going to try and fix it, because I don't want it to reach the customer, because the customers are the people who actually keep my doors open.
Yes, understood. Sheryl, fantastic. Thank you so much. I'm going to bring back Michelle and Dmitri now as we address some of these and other issues. It's really, really, Dmitri, welcome back. Michelle, welcome back. Lots of great topics. We covered a lot of ground actually so far. And I wanted to, while we do this section, when you're not speaking, just going to ask you to mute. And I'll try and address the questions, and then so that we don't have any feedback and so on. Michelle, going back, starting with you again. As we move into this ongoing uncertain time, and certainly this effort is one of the things to make our SMEs stronger over the period in terms of operationally, financially, as we said, rebuilding, reinforcing, and re-empowering SMEs. What are the key things that you would like SMEs to know about managing through this time?
I think what we have to understand is that we have an opportunity to tool. We have a lot of SMEs who have a lot of talent, and now they've been given a time to say, okay, you're not busy going to work every day or servicing the same amount of customers. So now that you have a little time, you have to retool. Because remember, a lot of SMEs are doing what they're good at, but they've never really learned business. And they're not necessarily business people, but they make a fantastic product. So get the training you need.
What are the key skills that are missing, Michelle? When you say that SMEs are good at making a product, but not necessarily good at business, what are the key things that you think are missing from many of our SMEs in terms of?
The first one is always finances. But if they can outsource, if they can't do it, then they have to find a way to outsource it.
Mm-hmm.
The second one, I think that it's not just SMEs, but I find it a gross deficit in Jamaica in general, or maybe more than just Jamaica, but execution. So if they can just learn how to do this project plan that we're doing at the Create Your Strategic Roadmap, then they can learn how to write down the things that you're going to do, when you're going to do, and who's going to be responsible for it. And as I said today in the meeting, the responsible person can be someone you delegate. It doesn't have to be you, the SME owner. Learn to delegate more. Do it yourself, or get a consultant to do it for you, but don't just talk about doing it and don't do it.
Actually execute. Dmitri, I'm going to talk to you now about, because especially with your experience at Branson Center, what stops us from executing well? Michelle talked about the fact that we have ideas and things, but one of the things that stops us, and it's a national problem, which is saying, is execution. When you're working with some of the people at Branson Center, for example, or even SMEs you're coming into contact with now, what's the break between the idea and the execution? What is it that we're not doing?
Actually, I think it's on scaling. So what happens, somebody has an idea, they created a product or service, and they execute very well at that, initially as a small business, 5 people, 10 people. But as you start to scale up, you have to actually pull yourself away from this and work on the business and not necessarily in the business. And so as the founder, as the CEO, senior management, you have to start now working on it from a strategic perspective and trying to identify how it is you can empower, delegate, as Michelle said, identify where the gaps are, manage risks. I think that's the biggest thing. More managing risk versus just executing, because the risks is what's pulling down your execution overall.
So rather than out in the fires yourself, which is what you do when you're three men, when you get to 6 men, 10 men and women, you have to make sure you put systems in place to make sure that you are you're managing the risk rather than fixing the fire, outing the fire.
Prevention is better than cure.
Yes, understood. Also want to follow up with the finance issue that Michelle also talked about, the lack of finance knowledge that we don't have. Some of it, by the way, I'm sure you've seen this as well, is we don't even necessarily have basic math in some of our business situations. Can you, Dmitri, in the context of investing equity, can you teach a CEO finance? Or where would they go to get what you call practical finance or finance to run their business?
Well, that's a tough point. I mean, programs like one Honeybun Foundation is putting on now, I think, is a great opportunity for a CEO to learn finance overall and understand what they should be paying attention to. But directly, you can't be a jack of all trades. As CEOs are very niche and they know how to fix certain problems, and you want them to do what they do best. If finance is not your strong point, definitely hire somebody for that, whether that's an outsourced accounting firm or it is hire somebody internally. And more importantly, it's not just an accountant, but somebody that can actually do financial analysis to, warn you ahead of time that, okay, your expenses are going up, but your revenue is flat. So this is going to have this amount of impact, or, you're not getting as much productivity out of the team. Maybe we need to look at, how it is we can optimize it or find the bottlenecks, etc. But this finance spans across the entire company. So having the right person doing financial analysis is critical. And most times you find that great leaders in companies that have one or two backgrounds. They're either very strong with sales or very strong with finance. And if you're neither, you might want to put someone else in that CEO or general manager role, and you focus on what you created the company to do, which is solve problems. Like that. That's your niche, that's your talent.
Sheryl, to you now and the team, what kind of team do you need to bring about high efficiency, high productivity, and high quality? What are you looking for? What type of team or what type of dynamic brings high quality and high efficiency?
First of all, you have to set a culture or define the culture that you want within your own organization, okay? As a CEO, you should define that first, even before you go about trying to hire somebody. You want to make sure, secondly, that you have defined the roles and responsibilities for the different types of positions on your organization chart, and make sure that you have those persons who you're hiring have the right qualifications and even more so the right attitude. Okay. What I want to make sure too is that persons understand is sometimes when you hire a person, they are qualified, but you also have to make sure that they are trained in the procedures. So once they come in, make sure that they have a proper onboarding program to understand the different procedures and so forth, because we don't just throw employees in here and just tell them to swim. You have to give them some guidance in order for them to be as productive as they can be. And one of the issues, though, when persons come in under the training program, it is like a day of going around and shaking everybody's hands. That's not onboarding. What you have to make sure that you do is that you have a program over a set period of time, even as much as 3 months. I remember when I was at Bureau Standards, my onboarding was 6 months before I could actually act on my own as a food inspector. So you have to make sure that those persons go through some sort of supervision, some sort of mentoring, and making sure that you check to see if they understand what their role is, number one, and what their performance objectives are. And once they are clear on what they are supposed to do, there's a higher likelihood that they'll be more productive and even more efficient, because productivity is more about quantity, but efficiency is more about the quality aspect. Are they giving you quality work? And that is what is important.
Understood. Dmitri, key issues that SMEs should be thinking about in this time.
Cash is number one overall. Making sure you have enough, what your runway is, you're on top of it. The next thing, of course, productivity, making sure that you don't slump and you can actually meet the opportunities that are available, whether they're scarce or plentiful, you have to be able to still put out. The third thing is definitely, just mental state and company culture and fatigue. We're getting all sorts of negative news, challenges, left, right, and center. I mean, 2020 has been a very rough year overall. How is it you're going to maintain your mental clarity, which is going to affect productivity and operations overall, making sure that everyone feels safe and comfortable coming to work and with an open mind?
We got a comment here from Empowerment, Dr. Smith Consultant. Equity is a cheaper option when you're evaluating your cost of capital. However, if you're looking for greater control, you may choose debt. The question to be answered is, are you just desiring control for sentimental reasons, or is it strategically prudent to retain control because of expected exponential future growth, or is that subsidiary of a business crucial to the future and expansion? So that is some of the things in terms of consideration between debt and equity. sense. Yes.
Yeah, that's how there's lots in that statement a while ago, but I just want to address control in particular, because I find that many entrepreneurs, they fear that, okay, I'm going to get the investment and I'm not going to have full control over my company. Really and truly, what happens is that, number one, don't give up control to investors who are not aligned. Make sure you have proper alignment overall in the first place. The second thing is that...
No, don't say that for a second, because you've used that word a few times. Aligned. What does that mean, Dmitri? How do I tell if my investors are aligned? What am I looking for, listening for?
Well, for one, in the conversation, you might hear certain things like, okay, you're getting a private equity investment now, but you hear them say, we'd like to list on a stock exchange within 3 to 5 years. Is this something you're already looking for, yes or no? Because as part of their investment approach, they might require that the company lists to meet their own internal targets, right? If you think of other entities, like, for instance, if somebody's investing from a fund that is heavily invested in by pensions, that pension will expect a certain amount of returns every single year. And so they might require a certain amount of dividends or profit share every single year as part of that investment. If it is that your company, you don't plan to provide a dividend in the next 3 to 5 years because of high growth, then that's not a direct alignment. And then, of course, at the end of the day, all businesses are people. You have some that are more aggressive, some are less aggressive, some like certain approaches or not. Is it that everyone is agreed on the approach? And most importantly, if that approach doesn't work, how do you manage conflict? What is the agreed approach when something goes wrong, and how are you going to manage that going forward?
Excellent. Michelle, you did a transition that many of us in business would want to do. You went from a privately held family company and you went public. What changed? What was better? And what was, Lord, dead for go back to a private setup? What did you learn in the process of transitioning from a private company to a public company?
Well, what I would say is that Honeybun has always practiced good governance. So the transition was not dramatic. So I think that if companies are practicing good governance from their small, it's not that difficult. We were doing things like regular reporting. We had an advisory board. So the advisory board was converted to a board of directors. What I found challenging was the level of accuracy and demand on time for the public company requirements. So that only made us stronger, however. So we have managed, and I have truly enjoyed the level of accountability, but that's just a personal thing that you have to achieve as a public company.
Public company, yes.
So I'm not dying to get off. I actually enjoy the challenge.
Yes, excellent. Sheryl, any last words from you as we start to wrap up about either advice or about a story or something that you think would be helpful for our viewers to hear?
The thing is, we have to always listen to our customers, and I'm coming from a productivity and a quality perspective. I'm also in business, and we are in trying times, and we have to make sure that we are always pushing. But at the same time, while we are pushing, we want to make sure that we are taking into consideration all the principles that as Honeybun Foundation has laid out in all these courses, because we need help. SMEs need help as much as they can, whether it is from a cash perspective, but also from a knowledge perspective. And once you gain that knowledge on how to run your business or how to manage your employees and going forward, I just think that this is teaching us a lesson, and we have to make sure that we implement the lessons that we have learned. So we don't want to go back when the economy opens, but we don't want to go back to the old normal. The new normal is going to be better because we would have been so much better for it.
And having been trained and so on. Thank you very much, Sheryl. This was fantastic in terms of your input. We were really, I feel like our mind exploded in terms of the knowledge and stuff that we got. Thank you very much. Dmitri, last words on your end.
Thank you.
Sheryl mentioned evolution a while ago. I really want to see us have a new normal for business. Everybody has gotten very lean during COVID. I want us to see how long we can stay, lean and use that extra cash, even as revenues increase, to make sure we can reinvest in the companies and improve going forward. And most importantly is that, especially here in Jamaica, we have a huge advantage over our developed counterparts in, say, Europe or North America that are really challenged by COVID right now. If we can get back up on our feet faster than they can, do the marketing, start the exports of products and services, and we have a huge advantage to, beat them back in that recovery process. So use the time to strategically look at how you can expand during a crisis. There was a saying, never waste a good crisis.
Right.
So use that time and see how it is you can leapfrog going forward. And if you did have some inefficiencies, to just cut those out during this time.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Dmitri. Michelle, going to give you the last word.
Okay.
Talk about the program and how you see it as an ongoing support for SMEs.
Okay. The Honeybun Foundation is there. We're building models, so we're not doing one-off things. So I want people to encourage people to go onto the website and become a member on the foundation so we can continue to communicate with you. So as we build these models, these back office, these
what's the website, Sheryl? What's the website?
www.thehoneybunfoundation.com.
Okay.
There it is.
Yes.
And I also want to say in ending that the private sector that have supported us by sponsoring some of these SMEs because they could not afford the programs. This is with Cinco, NCB, the Sagicors, and Fleetwood. We're encouraging private sector to join us in the program moving forward, and we call them our nation builders because this is what they are helping us to do. As a private sector, we want to work to help the SMEs. When we make the SMEs stronger, we create more employment, they have more money to spend, and they're spending it back with the other bigger companies who have supported them, and together we all work together. The collaborative effort is what will bring us out of this crisis.
Michelle, I hadn't thought I'd meant to ask you before, but is there any particular industry that you're working with, or is it any SME? And what's the size business that I come and join your program?
We say SME, and we do have on the training platform some bigger companies. In fact, we have 2 public companies.
Wow.
And
okay.
Yes, so we're very happy for that because, in fact, the programs have been described as a mini master's program in business.
Yes.
And so we have medium-sized business as well, earning over $75 million. But we also have smaller companies. But for this program, we wanted to have people with business experience and some knowledge of Excel so they can manage a financial training. So we have every size there, and we also have different industries. We even have one NGO. It's very unusual, but we looked at the companies that applied and accepted them based on a demonstrated ability to improve their capacity and make a difference.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Michelle, Dmitri, Sheryl. This has been fantastic. Hope it was as enjoyable for you as it was for me. This was very, very educational. I can already sense that. So thank you very much, guys.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Nevada.
My head is exploding. We have had, for those of you who missed it, remember it's available online. We had Michelle Chong, who is the CEO of Honeybun Limited, and she spoke about this new program, how we're going to rebuild, reinforce, and re-empower SMEs by helping to create a strategic roadmap. We spoke to Dmitri Dawkins, who's now managing director of Graph Ventures, which is an equity firm, and he talked about how to pitch a business to venture, as well as we did a problem solve, which he talked about a hotel that had very good business before COVID, will have very good after COVID, but sort of has difficulty in between. And he gave us a bunch of financing options and deal structures that would be interesting and possible. So for those of you who are struggling in the 2-year interim, make sure you seek out special structures and not just assume that the financing that you have is the one that you should be going forward with. And third, we had Sheryl Anderson, who's the Managing Director of Quality Systems Solutions and Initiatives. And she talked to us about managing quality and managing productivity. 3 very different views, 3 different issues, and all available through the Honeybun Foundation program, which started today at special rates, but will be going on. So there'll be, even if you didn't catch this wave of 12 courses in 10 weeks, there will be others, and it will be offered frequently and near permanently. So congratulations on that. We've come to the end of episode 17, Rebuilding, Reinforcing, and Re-empowering SMEs. We will continue to be here as long as you think that we are needed. Very, very critical that we expand our knowledge base, especially in this time. Do not just sit around saying, Lord Jesus, for me, what's going to happen? No, that's not going to help you, right? Lord Jesus is part of the story, but not what you're going to do about it. And very critical that you put stuff in here, that you become a better business person by the time this crisis is over. Speaking of crisis, I want to talk to you again about the PSOJ fund, the COVID response fund. The situation is getting and will get dire. Many, many people have lost jobs, and food security is a real issue for a lot of Jamaicans. Remember, we are not a society with a high savings rate. And yes, all of us say, boy, I can't do anything now, you know, time's hard for me, time's hard for me. But remember, even $12, 24 US dollars, 50 US dollars, 100 US dollars, these can help one of our fellow Jamaicans. $12, because of the donations that we've received from big companies, $12 donation from you feeds a Jamaican for 2 weeks. $50 can feed a family of 4. So recognize the potential crisis that we're in. I'll put up the chart again. And it's at Stand for Jamaica. Charity, GoFundMe.com, Stand for Jamaica. Give what you can, give when you can, as often as you can. And remember, it's about us surviving this period. Thank you very much for joining me. Rochelle will be back next week. I hope you didn't miss her too much. But next week, when we go to episode 18, COVIDcast, Nevada Pow, signing out. Thank you.